So much for joining today. Rather than show us, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your background and how you arrived at where you are today?
Hey, Laolu, before I start, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to participate in this initiative. I think it's worthwhile. I think that certainly a lot of young men and women coming through right now would certainly benefit from what comes out of these podcasts. So to start, I'm a fourth generation St. Louisan. Grew up there, born and raised there, and then went to a parochial school, started in parochial school, and then again went to secondary school, and then eventually went to the University of Central Missouri, where I received my bachelorate degree there. And from there, I was fortunate enough to come on board with Anheuser Busch, coming and basically joining their management training program. At 21 years old, I graduated in May and started with them July 1st of 1973 into their management training program. This program, and I was pretty fortunate in the sense that this program basically took on roughly around 7, and it was a year training program in which we had an opportunity to learn, to be exposed to every facet of the company. And certainly as a young 21-year-old right out of college, to be exposed to every aspect of a company the size of Anheuser-Busch was truly, when I say I was blessed or basically fortunate. Also, I might also add that I too were one of those young men at the time that was benefited from the 1964 Civil Rights Movement. At that time, when I came on board in 1973, companies like Anheuser-Busch around the country were bringing on, say, people of color, or let's say minorities, into their management ranks. So again, I am one of those individuals, young men that basically benefited from the Civil Rights Movement. A company like Anheuser-Busch that's been in existence since 1852, I might say that probably I would say that I was maybe the third African American brought into the program, and the program was anywhere from 12 to 18 months, and I was the third one that was invited to participate in the program. So I trained in St. Louis for a year, and as I said, pretty much in every aspect of the company, from production, from brewing to accounting to marketing, sales, advertising, maintenance, engineering, every aspect of the company. So I was, again, very fortunate. And from there, I was relocated at 22 years old. I was relocated to Jacksonville, Florida, where it was my first relocation as a first line supervisor. So going into the South, coming from St. Louis at 22 years old, not knowing anyone, basically I had to make my way. And luckily I was with a very good company at the time, which made it was difficult, but it made it a lot easier when you're with a large company that will pretty much do a lot of things for you to ensure that you're successful, certainly on the move. Okay, now what you did once you got there is pretty much which was all on you.
Yeah.
So worked in Jacksonville, Florida for about 8 years as a first line supervisor, then became an area supervisor. Then I got relocated again from Jacksonville to Los Angeles. So Los Angeles, I went there. Matter of fact, let me back up. I got to Jacksonville because they were going through a modernization, and I came on board to help with the modernization with some of the new equipment that they were installing in the plant at that time. So after 8 years of being in Jacksonville, I got relocated to Los Angeles for their modernization. So then it brought me into it brought me into another plant and another place where, again, not knowing anyone, again, trying to, let's say, make my way, and also to coming into a new plant. You're the new person coming into a plant, and especially as an African American, especially a young guy coming into the plant, was definitely different for them and different for me as well. But coming into Los Angeles, I worked there, progressed to where various supervisory managerial roles until and for 6 years, and then was tapped again to move to another relocation for another modernization that was going on in Newark, New Jersey. So from California, where it was sun, palm trees, great, just beautiful sun and fun, to now move to the Northeast, which was a lot different when you're working in the New York, New Jersey corridor. So worked there, and then progressed, and then for 3 years, and then got relocated again because of some issues that they were having in Houston at the time, and got relocated to Houston, to where I then eventually went there as an assistant plant manager, and eventually became plant manager of the Houston facility. From there, I got moved again back to St. Louis, back to our corporate offices, but this time in the role of vice president of operations for plant operations, where I was responsible for all 12 breweries across the system in the country. And then eventually did that for almost like 8 years or so. And then I got moved to where I became president and CEO of their packaging group, Anheuser Busch Packaging Group, which consisted of 5 subsidiaries. Basically, that supported the brewing operations, but also made, let's say, packaging materials for some of the largest soft drink manufacturers, soft drink companies in the country. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, if you look at that career. So that career took me across what equates to totally right around 38 years, credited for 38 years of service. So came in at 22 and left as an old man, basically. But
man, that's an incredible story and short narrative that you provided. So I want to go back a little further back to St. Louis. You're in in the Midwest. You're growing up in parochial school. I'm sure there were certain disciplines that must have been imbued in you at that time that sort of shaped your personality and who you became over time, and sort of your approach to anything that you've undertaken.
Yeah. You're right, Laolu. Being in parochial schools, if you will, through elementary and my secondary education, basically established a level of let's say discipline. I would say also, it not only was it a good education, but it was one that was on a foundation of discipline as well. As well as, I would say, it also taught me one thing that those who went to a parochial school would understand. I'm a Catholic school boy. So a Catholic school boy, they would understand what that means. That means that discipline, you got a conscience, you got a set of values, and you have a strong sense of work ethic and perseverance, which is what's required as when you're talking about as a little boy and you're coming all the way through secondary school. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it instills some of the values and some of the discipline in me that allowed me to be successful, through that 38 years with Anheuser Busch. And I might also say that I was pretty fortunate that, unlike maybe today, where I went with a great company, That's key. I mean, and I would say my advice to any young person that's looking for a company or to land in a company is to land in one that is principled. Most of all, have money, and and um, and because if it's principled, it allows you to grow. You know, if you are let's say an overachiever, as an example, you know, then it will recognize performance and allow you to grow. I might also add that I was fortunate in the sense that I went into manufacturing. Manufacturing, it's not subjective. It's either you did it or you didn't. Okay, which is, for a person like me, that was my personality. That was who I was. You know, a performance-driven individual. So in manufacturing, you know, you're being measured daily, weekly, monthly, annually. So when you're being measured like that, and as the saying goes, you get what you measure. You know, you find that it takes a lot of that subjectivity out of, let's say, what people may want to impose upon you, because numbers don't lie. And so I was fortunate that I went into the manufacturing side of the business, which allowed me to excel.
Was that, you know, obviously you're in St. Louis, so one can see how Anheuser Busch, the large presence they played there, might have been a natural attraction. But was there some calculus in your mind as you sort of go through your college experience and career that kind of sets you, at least has you thinking, let me go into this arena, you know, arenas that look like manufacturing because they fit my personality? Or how does someone make that determination? Or is it just, you know, do you rely on the luck of the draw? Or are there some things that you might consider about yourself and say, hey, this might suit me better?
Yeah, I would say it's a good question, because some of the other guys that I was in training with, you know, a few of them decided to take some other paths. It was actually a production management training program, so it was kind of aimed towards the manufacturing side. But some chose to do some other things, take some other let's say aspects of the company, to take that as something that they want to focus on versus manufacturing. Manufacturing is if anybody that works in manufacturing will tell, it's a tough side of the business. It is especially when you're dealing with all kinds of employees, all kinds of disciplines. You're dealing with salaried employees, union employees. You're dealing with a lot of difference in a type of manufacturing operation, and you have to basically work at it to be able to excel.
Yeah.
I would say, let me give you a story. This might be interesting, and it might prove some interest. Of some interest to those who might be listening. So when I graduated out of college, I happened to be, my family had a business there in St. Louis. We had an electric company. And so when I got out of college, I was naturally going to work for the electric company. But so again, I started pretty much in the lower echelon of that company, you know, again, basically not giving me anything. So basically I was like a material supply individual. So one day I'm sitting in a trailer, in an equipment trailer, mud. It's been raining, so it's mud. I mean, I'm loaded with mud. I'm sitting there because there's a flat tire on the trailer. So we're waiting for the tire to get there so we can change the tire in the mud nonetheless. All right. So I'm sitting there as I'm waiting. I'm looking across. It was the parking lot of a Jewish health center. So since you're just killing time and waiting, I'm just watching, trying to understand what would be what's going on in a Jewish health center. Now this is 1973, all right. So that's not something that people of color knew a lot about, working out in health centers, right, at that time.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there. And I noticed that in the parking lot was a Mercedes SL, a little small, and matter of fact, it was the first one I've ever seen. But sitting there, it gave me a lot of time to look at it in the parking lot. So I'm just watching it, and all of a sudden, and this might be almost an hour, of just watching it and just, daydreaming in a way. All of a sudden, I see an African American guy come out of the door of the health center. So now that caught me by surprise. So as he's walking through the parking lot, and guess where he's headed to? That is right then and there. That changed the direction of my life. I knew that I wanted to do something different, than what I was. But that was one of those moments in life where you make a decision where it has an impact on your life. As small as it was, it had an impact on my life to change the direction of where I wanted to go. So when I got hired on with Anheuser Busch at 22 years old, that was kind of like something new and different. And as I said, I was pretty fortunate to get that kind of opportunity because, again, coming on the heels of the civil rights movement, they were in the process of hiring African Americans. Yeah. And I had to be one of them.
So you're part of sort of this first set of African Americans who are getting opportunities in corporate America. And, at this point, Black folks following Brown versus Board of Education in 54, the Civil Rights Act. You can now go to, certain PWI or predominantly white institutions and obtain your degree. So you're getting these shots. You land at this first job. What was that like, especially coming into a program where you're one of so few African Americans and people who might not have even encountered African Americans in their workspace in the past? Take us through that journey of that first job.
Well, again, another good question, because again, I was one of the, I could walk around in corporate Anheuser Busch at the time and not see an African American for weeks at a time. I might walk around just, for lunch or something and not see anyone of color, except I might see a few African American ladies working in an administrative aspect of in one area that I noticed. But other than that, that was it at the time, and especially in a managerial type of role. There may have been a few African Americans working in the plant, but for the most, when I say few, I mean a few. But certainly a young man such as myself walking around Anheuser Busch at that time, there might have been, I can think of one other African American male that had came out of the program who was working there at the time as well. So it was definitely different. I mean, I would say that early part of my life, at 22 years of age, again, that discipline that came from that parochial, that Catholic school upbringing was something that kind of was inside me to give me that discipline to be able to work in that environment, especially in the production environment. The other environments were, be it marketing, sales, and so forth. That was when, that was great. I mean, that was like taking a little vacation. But when we're within the production side, that was where, really, as a young man, I had to really grow up pretty quick, because at that time, I would say unions were strong. They kind of set the tone, especially for a 22-year-old, sure. Especially for young men who were working in that plant. Maybe they might have been 25 years of experience or something like that. But for a young guy, African-American guy in that environment, yeah, it required some tenacity. It required a sense of a certain level of confidence in oneself, to to be able to excel, let's say, in that area, because as I mentioned, you're measured every day. So
Yeah.
those numbers had to come in every day. So depending on how well you could work with the crews, depending on how well you did that particular shift.
Yeah. And it's, when you look at a manufacturing operation of that scale, man, that had to be a fairly technical environment. I mean, millions of dollars are invested in these plants and machinery, and then you're dealing with food, so you got safety considerations. How did you go about, sort of honing in your technical proficiencies? And part, I've got to think that understanding how to run a plant is just one of the core competencies of a production manager. And then how did you really internalize that, hone in your skills, and hopefully how did that help you thrive as such a young person in the position you were in?
Well, again, you're being at 22 years of age, you're learning almost in doing. You've got some technical training, meaning training classes, equipment classes, but also you're learning as a result of watching and looking at how others operate the equipment. You hands-on, you start learning, giving a little bit of hands-on to improve your. I would say that most of my knowledge that I gained was through the various positions and jobs that I had, assignments that I had, allowed me to continue to build my technical skills that went along with the assignments that I had. Let me share another story, which again may be a teaching point. So then I get relocated to Jacksonville. So I finally get out of St. Louis. It was the first one. Myself and one of my colleagues, we got sent to Jacksonville, Florida for the modernization. So in working in Jacksonville during those times, I went in one part of the production process. Then eventually got moved through, over time, got moved to another aspect of the production process, but learning. So now I had a chance to learn a second piece of the business that was in the production process. Then I got an opportunity to learn a third piece of the production process. So as I was going along, I kept learning different parts of the business of what it took to make a product and actually get it out the door. So from production, then I went into warehousing, and learned all the aspects of, be it shipping trucks, shipping rails, palletizing, all the different functions that go along with warehousing. So at some point, I got to the point that I would come into work. I might have been scheduled for a particular part of the process, but then because I had let's say, been exposed to so many other different parts of the process, that I would come in and actually be sent with basically to cover whoever was absent in the process. All right, now, when they were doing that, they didn't realize that they were giving me all that knowledge, all that training. They didn't realize that. They were basically doing it because someone was out. Someone was didn't show up for work that day. Some supervisor or manager didn't show up for work that day. So then I would come in and they'd say, okay, Mike, you take that part of the process today. Next day, it would be another part of the process. So this went on for a couple of years where I'm bouncing almost every day to different parts of the process where my skills were being honed. So the first 8 years is when I really honed my, let's say, manufacturing skills, or at least my equipment knowledge, process knowledge, because of just bouncing around because others didn't want to do that job. Okay. Most individuals at the time want to stay in one part of the process and only stay in that part of the process. Where I, being a younger guy, enjoyed the difference of coming in, or else I would be bored, you know.
Sure.
But because I was bouncing around, but at the time they didn't realize that they were allowing me to get this much knowledge. So one day it turns out that I am probably the most qualified individual in the plant. Okay. I mean, technically qualified individual of the plant, to the point that when a promotion came up, you know, then it became a matter of, well, where instead of subjectivity coming into play, especially during that time in the South, subjectivity come into play. Now objectivity came into play. So manufacturing, again, it's more objective. And so now who was the most qualified? Just so happens to be the black guy was the most qualified. You know, so I got that opportunity, and then I got moved to, as I said, to Los Angeles on a lateral. Now again, a lateral. That lateral was, you know, okay. For me, it was just another part of the country, something different, something new. But when I got there, I was more qualified than most of the individuals there. But then yet they put me in a part of the process that was at that time thought to be, the lesser part of the process. When in fact, I was the most knowledgeable individual coming in new from another city. But after a while, you know, again, because of the objectivity, because of manufacturing and how it is basically quantitative.
Yeah.
It's all performance. Eventually, I became the individual that became running the whole shift, became the superintendent, you know, at that time for the whole shift. So then became manager and so forth, and then got sent to Newark to take them through modernization. But my point, I guess I'm trying to make, you know, for anyone listening, is that when always take assignments. I mean, even the ones you don't want, take them, because what they are, they're building blocks of learning. They're building blocks. That is what allows you to be, let's say, technically sound. And I always used to say with my employees is that the more technically sound you are, the more people person you can be. Right? The more people person you can be. Think about that. Because you're not challenged. You're not, let's say, operating in being dependent, you know, which takes another, you know, where you're dependent because you don't know. But it's a different kind of behavior as when you know and you're technically sound, then you become a people person, and then you become a person that helps others, helps develop the skills of others, because you're not challenged by others. If that makes
it absolutely does. I mean, when you know your stuff, the work can be more fun. I'm an entrepreneur, as you know, and I'd say one of the things about entrepreneurship is you have to know all sides of the business. There is no, you know, you're the HR, you're legal, you're accountant, you know, you're chief marketing officer, you're the public affairs person. So when you're running establishments, it matters, because when somebody doesn't show up, or they just drop the ball, or they quit on you, you being able to step in makes a difference, or just in your ability to negotiate and navigate just the day-to-day of running your business. And so that's such an essential component of it. But one thing that I find unique in sort of your story and journey is you tend to have this open-mindedness and embracing the process along the way. And I think that means something, because a lot of folks, and I reference my background as an entrepreneur, a lot of folks will work in industries and they're just interested in, I'm an accountant, not really understanding what's the big picture of what this company does. How do we make money? And so you seem to take a different approach, you know, your willingness to move from one end of the country to another, and then to fulfill all these different roles. What was the driving What was the drive behind that, or is that just an inclination you had to be so open and willing to sort of embrace the process?
Yeah. Well, just like when you're young, and you're coming through, some of it is just the excitement of doing something different, living somewhere different, meeting different people, having to work with different people, different parts of the country act and think, work, and it's set a different way. Not everyone is and it's easy to say, but not different parts of the company kind of move a little different and think a little different than other parts of the country. Depending on Northwest is one way, I would say Southwest is another, Northeast is another, South is another, and I had an opportunity through working with Anheuser that I had an opportunity to work in all these different parts of the country. So let me just say that. Let me also say that. Let me go back to what you were saying about being an entrepreneur. Now, there's two ways of operating. Okay, you can operate like I was operating, which I was operating to a budget. Okay, where my whole focus was quality and reducing the cost of goods sold. In your case, as an entrepreneur, you are basically in a P&L. You are basically working to make working either to make a living, to pay yourself, or to pay others. But what you have to do, you have to deliver because other people are counting on you. That's sometimes a little more daunting, even though my approach, what I was doing for a living was tough. I would also say what is even tougher is when you do to make money, so others are counting on you to make money to pay them, which is that entrepreneurial approach, and that's every day. You can't get sick. Okay, you can't decide I don't want to do it today. No, you have to do it every day. But also I would say that another thing that I found that when I was going through, as I got higher, as I higher and started getting more responsibility, especially when I became at the level of plant management, where I was responsible for, now we're talking about billions of dollars of assets,
And this was when you transitioned from Newark to Houston. Did you come in as plant manager, or was that
as assistant plant manager? Because I came in as an assistant plant manager because the person that was in my role, did something or made a decision that because they came into the millions, they lost millions. Okay. The higher you get, especially in a manufacturing, especially, it's a one strike league. If I pay you a lot, then, there is no excuses. So basically I came down to take the role or the spot of another individual, but then eventually became the plant manager of the facility. But then which is true of being an entrepreneur, what you learn is you manage through the financials. No longer am I trying to manage to get, let's say, encourage people to perform, to work, now I'm managing mainly through financials. I'm looking at the money. I'm looking at work, because in manufacturing, nothing is free. Nothing is free. I mean, if the faucet's dripping, you're paying for it. If it's lights are on, you're paying for it. If you're paying salaries, if you're paying wages, if you're paying benefits, if you're paying, giving away product to them, in achievement and hands, something to encourage them to work more, whatever it is, nothing is free. So when nothing is free, then all you have to do is worry about what bucket is the money showing up, that makes sure that the buckets are correct as to where the money's showing up, so that you can manage. But then I don't have to go and watch every aspect of the process, because I can look at the financials. I can sit and look at the financials and know exactly that I've got a problem somewhere, you know, either inventory, somewhere there's a problem because it's showing up financially, which then requires me to dig into it to find out, is it an accounting issue? Is it where the money was, or let's say the activity was accounted for incorrectly? But something's wrong when you start seeing, because the kinds of money that's involved, you're talking about millions of dollars that are involved. And so you're watching that, you're watching those kinds of things every, as I said, weekly, monthly, annually. You're watching those dollars. So as you get higher, you start managing more through the financials.
Yeah. So you now you're plant manager, and it's you were, just a quick note here, were you the first African American plant manager in the company's history at the time?
No, I was the second.
The second. Okay. So you've made it up there.
1852.
It's 1852. So yeah, let's not forget that it's 120 plus year history. You were the second African American plant manager. But I know that along the way there were some challenges, some moments where you might have felt disenchanted or weren't getting the recognition. People might have felt you weren't ready or deserving. What were some of those moments, if you care to share, and how do you posit that people overcome sort of some of those low points that we all undoubtedly encounter along the way?
Well, Laolu, there was many challenges, barriers along the way. I mean, if you're talking about someone at 22 years old, first plant being in the South, and then moving from plant to plant, you're dealing with all kinds of different kinds of individuals and different kinds of people, different kind of managers, different kind of bosses, if you will. You're dealing with a lot of difference. And so what gets you through it, what gets you through it is the fact that, you have to have a little bit of self-confidence, in yourself, believing in yourself. But as I said, it gets to be that if it's an objective type of process. See, where some of us have difficulty is when it's subjective. Mm-hmm. The more objective it is, then that speaks to where you can see performance. I was fortunate that I went into a part of the process that was performance driven, and with a company that was performance driven. So my personality, my zeal, if you will, was the type. It was a perfect match. But also, I'm also going to say that it helps to work with a company that's principled, that has, let's say, some processes, some procedures, some structure, where there's not a lot of subjectivity for people like myself, if you will, or people like us to excel. Because performance, it's either you did it or you didn't. Okay, I mean, it's that gets to, and if there's real money involved, then it becomes less and less about friendships, as it is about performance. So you will find that in at least in the environment that I was in, those who performed were rewarded. Now, may not come as fast as you would like. And don't get me wrong, I ran into any number of people who thought that I got too much or shouldn't get enough. But it comes more in this way. Okay, here, this is how I'm gonna give you a little bit of how it shows up. See, here's an opportunity, but you need a little more time. You just need a little more, maybe in a year, you'll be ready for that spot. It's always something that you might be missing or you don't have enough of as compared to others. It shows itself as, it may show itself as, I think you've already got enough, that you've already had enough opportunity. You've got more than what you should have got. It shows up in different kinds of ways. But one way it definitely shows up is that little thing is that little approach that says, you're good. You're really good, But I think if you had another year, you'll be ready. I'm just going to make sure you're ready. But while you're getting that other year or two getting ready, when you're already ready, when you're ready, others are getting that opportunity. Like others are going like, oh, yeah, he doesn't even know the job, but I think he'll do well there. Others may get that opportunity with a lot less experience, a lot less knowledge, a lot less skills, a lot less, because they are ready.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, will always need a little bit more, and sometimes I think it's because those who will give you opportunity, they feel like they may be on the hook if you don't excel, if you don't excel. So they may be a little bit more reluctant about giving you opportunity until you're, quote, a proven individual.
Yeah.
I would tell you that I'll give you another example. As I was coming through, now I worked in St. Louis, Jacksonville, LA,
Newark.
I got to Newark, and now I'm the assistant plant manager. Now I'm the operations manager for Newark. And then I had a vice president come down because now the assistant plant manager's role opened up in Newark. And I was the operations guy, who was brought there for the modernization, who took them through the modernization nonetheless. All right. So I had a VP sit there in my office and say, Mike, we'd like to give you, that opportunity, but we just don't know you. You just don't know me. I mean, think about that. We just don't know you. And yet you've been working for the company now for maybe, 15, 20 years?
Yeah.
You moved from maybe 4 plants under your belt, but we just don't know you. I mean, that's how it shows up sometimes, but that's one of those that you listen to it, you know it for what it is, but it never fails that performance. You eventually get that opportunity.
Yeah.
Eventually you're going to get that opportunity. And I'm not saying that you wait, but you kind of, sometimes you let things kind of work itself out, and without, being too aggressive, you just kind of let it work out, because it normally works itself out, especially in a performance-driven organization.
Certainly. So you persevere, you end up in Houston, and eventually you're the guy. You're assigned the top role. You're running this plant. What was it like being a plant manager? Just talk to us about what that role entailed and what your experience and some maybe interesting tidbits about that was like.
Well, let me give you a little story about that part too. All right, because these are all teaching points, okay, that others might appreciate. Okay, so now I'm in Houston, and I'm the assistant plant manager of Houston, and now I kind of get Houston back on track. All right, again, because of all that technical experience and all that experience coming through the years, now I'm in a spot where, all that comes into play. So now it's a plant that was struggling. I come in, I get the plant back on track as the assistant plant manager. And so now the plant manager job opens up. And then but now there's some others that came along with me over the years. One of them had already had a plant. Two of them had already had a plant. Now I'm still sitting as assistant plant manager. But then I had a person come into my office we had some organizational development guys, some what we call like shrinks that would come in, and help us, sometimes. And he says, Mike, you're just not part of you're just not part of the club yet. They just not letting you in the club. It's one of, so again, another barrier, something else that kind of sets you back, because you're wondering what club, but that was his way of saying, you're not one of us yet, so but eventually I got the opportunity because, again, perseverance, and I got the opportunity. Now running a plant is like running a city. It's like running every aspect that you got in the city, between, if it's police, ours is security. If it's HR, if it's engineering, if it's quality, every role is within a plant. So it's a city. And so what you have to do, and because of all that experience, it allowed me to know a little bit about what their role was and what they're supposed to provide to help us run that plant. So again, each plant has a department, has like a department head or a person who runs that particular part of the process. And my role is to coordinate, to ensure that all those parts of the process are on the same page. So running one is, you're looking at, there's a safety aspect of it. There's people that could get there's people who could get killed, there's all kinds of things that happen in a day that it's part exciting, but it's also part of just you being experienced enough, because basically those employers are counting on you to keep them gainfully employed. They're counting on you. The decisions that you make should be about keeping them gainfully employed. Yeah. So, and not to mention, you got unions, different unions that you're also dealing with in a plant. They've got their priorities as well. Got some of their priorities. So, you got your salary, individuals. You got, in manufacturing, it's like I used to put it as, Laolu, it's the 50-40-10 rule. All right, 50% of your employees in a plant come to work every day, do a doggone good job. You don't know their names. You don't know who they are. But you know that they just come in and do the work. 40% of the people in a plant sometimes is they do a good job, but it's what's in it for me. I mean, I'm doing a good job, but what do I get out of it? I mean, they always want to know what's in it for me. Now I'll do the job, but I need to know what do I get out of this? I know what you get out of it, but what do I get out of it? So 40% of your employees are like that. 50% really don't care. They just do a job. They just come in, they get paid, they do the job. The other 10% now are those are the ones that you know. They're the ones that no matter what happens. No, the sun is up, but it ain't up enough. All right. It is, nothing is ever right or perfect for them. 10% of them So 10% of them is like, I mean, nothing is ever going to be right. No matter how hard, whatever you do, it still ain't going to be enough, and it's not going to be right. All right. And then of that 10%, there's another 3%. Of that 10%, there's another 3% are truly your problems. You know, they're truly your problems. I mean, the ones that you really, really have to watch out for. The reason why they manufacture, you might come in early, to start up early, to see what they've done. You know, sometimes, you know, see exactly what they've done, you know, because they're not really there to help you. But that's 3% within that, and that could be 2%, that could be 4%, depending on the plant, depending on the culture of the plant.
Sure.
But it's the 50-40-10 rule. In a plant, guess who gets fired usually? Guess who loses their job of that 40-10?
I think I'm going with the 10.
No.
Oh.
That 40%. Those in that 40% category lose their job generally because they're watching what the 10's doing. They're watching what the 10 is doing. The 10 doesn't come to work, but they know just how many days to be out before getting in trouble. They know the contracts backwards and forwards. They're the ones that they are PhDs in contract. And how, you know, they are PhDs. Okay. But see, the 40% aren't. You know, they just do a good job, but they want to know what's in it for them. But they don't know the contract. They don't know the rules, the policies. So they end up watching what the 10% is doing and end up losing their job because that 10%, it knows what they're doing. You know, it knows what they're doing. So the 40%, generally the 40% is the ones that generally end up getting in trouble.
You know, that's one I've got to keep in mind. It's the 40%.
Any kind of environment, there's going to be 50, 40, 10. It's just a matter of
10. I love it. 10. I love it. So you're now plant manager. You've got your 50-40-10 rule. You're running this small city. For most people, especially manufacturing, plant manager tends to be the sort of the top of the mountain as far high as they're going to climb. To go any higher, it can be a major leap because people can be plant managers for 10, 15, 20 years and their career is done and that's it. So you make that leap. How does that happen? How does it all come together for you where you can make this, you know, what's a big jump?
Yeah, it was, well, I would say there was a series of events. There was a series of events that I really don't want to get into that series of events, but it has something to do with a strike, a work stoppage, that kind of thing. But I'm also going to say the reason why I got the opportunity, other than the fact that my plant was pretty much the only large plant that signed the contract. And they want to know how did that occur. But I would say it's because of another African American who was in the room, who was in the room. See, sometimes reason why we don't get opportunities as much or as quick is because we're not in the room. All right, we're not in the room to where the others' names get put in the hat for opportunity as well. Others will always have their names in the hat. You know, their names hat, but you might not be in the hat. You might be. I think Laolu is content where he is. I think he likes it there. You know, again, that other barrier. I say, I think he does a good job. No, I think we don't want to mess that up. Let's keep him there. It happens like, but see, if you're in the room, if you have now achieved to the point that you're in the room, then you can ensure that others get fair, not special, just fair opportunity. get the same opportunity, but you have to be in the room. You have to put yourself, work yourself hard, have the type of career that allows you to be in the room. Because most of the time we aren't in the room.
Yeah.
All right. And it just so happened there was an African American who was a vice president, a senior executive who was in the room. Now he wasn't in manufacturing. And I don't want to give you his name, but you would know who he is.
I know who he is. I do know, and that's incredible. And the reason I wanted you to kind of touch on that is we need advocates, and sometimes it's that advocate that can simply say, "Hey, have you thought of this person?" And that's so important, especially if you look at, we're having this interview in June of 2020, and when you think about how much our world has changed over the last 30 days, and we're in this heightened sense of trying to right historical wrongs, one of the areas that I've been trying to, really pay attention to and talk about is the corporate boardrooms, as well as in addition to senior executives, because if we're diversifying corporate boards, then we have a chance of having someone in the room. And then obviously there are other things that have to come together for the right opportunity. You want the right people in the room, because you could have had the brother in the room, but if he wasn't the right brother, he could have just been in the room. And so I think that's incredible. You have an advocate. Obviously, you guys must have gotten a chance to know each other. Before you talk more about this new role that you take on, might we segue for a moment and talk about, the importance of, cultivating, people will call it mentors, people will call it people that you can, bounce things off of. I can only imagine the higher you move it up in an organization, the more challenging it becomes to have sort of sounding boards or mentors or even a sponsor. What are your general thoughts around mentors or sponsors?
It's okay. I'll try it this way. Being of color, being African American, there's not many as you're coming through that you can bounce a lot of your concerns off of. There's because believe it or not, those who have worked it, would understand this. That you don't trust anybody. All right, you're like, you've got individuals that I'll give you an example. You learn that let's say you're an employee and you're a manager, a director or whatever, and you're going through a divorce. All right, so you share that. You share that with someone. I'm having some difficult times at home, and you're just sharing it with some friends or some colleagues. Okay, so now what happens is, if something happens negative in that process, in that operation, or you're not, let's say you're losing money for a reason, anything negative, guess what? Guess what's blamed?
Yeah.
He's going through some problems right now. Losing the money had nothing to do with that, or had nothing, or his performance had nothing to do with that. But it becomes the thing that those that you shared that with, would say, well, you need to cut him some. He's going through some difficult times right now. Except guess what happens? You're going through difficult times forever, because they will always keep that in them. So now opportunity opens up. Well, I heard he was going through some tough times right now. So let's look at somebody else. Let him work that out. You're really careful about sharing a lot of, and it's certainly you never, 101, you never share your personal life in your work life.
Yeah.
it's especially, I can only speak for the manufacturing environment, but you never share your you keep your personal life separate and keep your business life, your business strictly in that plan. You do everything, you talk about everything. It's got something to do with that business, that process, and leave your personal life, because it becomes the reason why it becomes a convenient excuse for them not to give you opportunity.
Yeah.
If opportunity presents itself. Now, as far as mentor, I got a thought on that. Sometimes, first of all, you'll find that in certain organizations, there's not a lot of people at certain levels enough to be your mentor.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not, it's really not. I was fortunate that there was one guy, that was in the room, was in that room, but one. There was another one of him there. All right. Okay, so it was him and then me. All right. As far as rank within the company, within all of the company, it was him and then me. All right. So it wasn't many people for me to bounce those kinds of issues or someone that was going to help me.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. So what you want, what I think is more important, especially for those of us of color, is to be in an organization that's principled, that has values, that has, let's say, knowing the difference between what's fair, a sense of fairness. That is more important within an organization than, quote, mentor. Because if it's an organization that's principled, then you will get opportunity. If you're performing, then you're going to get opportunity because it's principled, because it is fair, because it tries to do the right thing. Get with a great organization that has structure and that is fair. That will do more for you than a mentor. I mean, what mentor was I going to talk to that, since there was only me in manufacturing? Yeah. I mean, there was other people of color, other African American men and women at lower levels, but my role was to ensure that everybody got a fair chance. Not that you got anything more, but more or less, that you just had a fair chance. And generally, when you create an environment where everybody's got a chance, a fair chance, then that's all you can ask for, because we will excel then.
Yeah.
If people are principled and have a sense of fairness, I think that will do more sometimes than, quote, the mentor is there. Okay. Well, I'm gonna leave it.
No, very well stated. Very well stated. Very poignant points that you've made. Having a principled organization that creates a level playing field where, if it's a meritocracy and they can view things objectively. I had an interviewee not too long ago who talked about he just wanted a level playing field and objective analysis. And so he wasn't hamstrung with this notion of having to be twice as good. Like, no, just grade me on the merit. So very, very well put. Now, I want to come back. You now have this new title. What's that role that you take on after you get this significant promotion? And what was that experience like in your new role, I believe, as vice president?
Yes, of operations. Well, first it was vice president of plant operations, and then eventually vice president, where I was just responsible for the plants. Then I became vice president of operations, which I was responsible for the plants and corporate operations and all the corporate staff that supports the 12 plants at that time. 12 and then 2 internationally around maintenance and reliability maintenance and so forth. But that that was. This is why it's important that first of all, let me just back up a little bit about principled organization. This is why it's very important when you're interviewing or coming on board with the company, you should be interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. You need to make sure that that company has your best interest, that you ain't just coming on to be a worker bee, that you're coming in where, hey, they recognize performance, that they have opportunities for you to excel, other opportunities within the company. In other words, they're working to develop you, not just for you to come in and do a job. Because some of us sometimes, and I'm not, not trying not to be too general, but I'm saying some of us sometimes are just happy to get a job.
Yeah.
Well, what ends up happening just to get the job, you end up putting yourself in a position that doesn't allow you to grow, doesn't allow you to develop. The company they just need a good worker bee. So find out, and one way to do that also, let me just touch on this, is that, okay, every large company has a strategic plan. Okay, specific performance objectives, strategic plan. They got the mission, the vision, that kind of thing. Okay, but when you come in, if you're interviewing, and for whatever that role is, you want to see where it fits in that plan. If it's in the plan, somewhere in that. Because if it's not in that plan, you're a worker bee. Okay, you're a worker bee. If you aren't part of the strategy of what it takes, where they want to take the company over the next 5 years, and you don't have a role in that somewhere, or you don't, even no matter how low it is, you just got to make sure that your whatever role that is got a piece of what makes that strategy in that 5 years. Because if you're not in that strategy, then you are worker bee. All right. So it's important that you really make sure that you get on board with a good company that is, like I said, principled, that has structure, that has some structure to it, and not a lot of subjectivity sometimes to it, especially for those of us of color. All right.
Certainly.
Now, being vice president now just admit that, okay, so now I come into St. Louis, and because I had all those building blocks of learning. Now remember, so as a management trainee, learned every aspect of the company, then got relocated to Jacksonville, then worked all these different technical jobs, production type jobs, in every one of them. Then that building block took me to, if you will, to Los Angeles, to be involved in that modernization, to then take them through a modernization with those building blocks of learning that I learned in Jacksonville and in St. Louis. So now those building blocks got sent to Newark, where then another set of building blocks. So you're constantly building, so that when I moved to Houston and then eventually got the plant, think about all the building blocks of learning that took place, all the exposure, all the the ups and downs, the breakdowns, just everything that you've seen along the way, the good, the bad. You've seen good managers, bad managers. You've seen good employees, bad employees. You've seen a lot over those years. So now you get the plant manager. Now you ran the plant. So you ran a city, if you will, with everybody, and you were the guy. So not only did you have to run the city, you had to also be worried about what's happening in the city itself. Where you didn't do something, let's say regulatory, you weren't compliant, if you will, regulatory compliant. Or something with air, water, something that, what were you doing with your wastewater and so forth. You're looking at that, especially when your wastewater in a plant as the size of this one that I had was like, wastewater was like, water was 300,000, with 300,000 a month, and wastewater was 500, thousand a month. I mean, so you're sitting there like, whoa, and they looking for you to do something wrong so they can fine you, if you will, or various entities are looking at some kind of way to find you, or maybe it's OSHA, or you name it, other regulatory agencies getting involved in your plant. So you've had all that experience. So then you get up in St. Louis. I get in St. Louis as a vice president of plant operations. And then, but now think about it. All along the way, how many people I've met and worked with all along the way. Worked with, worked alongside, worked along union employees, all just salaried employees at all these different operations around the country. So then when you finally get to becoming now vice president of operations, you've been one of the 12, plant managers. You've been one of those guys. So now you're up there. Now you're responsible for you have responsibilities for those 12 plants or those 12 individuals. So you know what they're thinking and how they're thinking, and you know where to look. So you're experienced enough and they know you. More importantly, they know you because they watched you or worked alongside you as they came through and eventually got a plant. So now when you're talking to them, you're talking to them like one talks to someone who knows someone. It's a difference. It's a difference. This is where you know them and they know you. So there's the conversations around process, quality, money, is very candid, but without malice, because you all know each other. It's the trust that you had because all of you all worked alongside each other all those years, in various parts of your careers. All right. So now I get into St. Louis, and now I'm responsible for the plants. Okay. So, and you have to be, and I had to be in a plant 1 or 2 a week. So 1 or 2 a week. Now I'm in a plane. I'm on a plane going to these plants, generally with other individuals involved with some aspect of those plants, involved in some aspect of those plants. But we're going into, to see what's going on. Communication meetings where we're talking to the employees. And here's the key. Working through all those years, when you had a communication meeting, because we did communication meetings, like I might be in a plant once a week doing a communications meeting where you're telling them about the business, what's happening, what we need to watch out, how we're making money, losing money, what's selling, what not selling. They get a chance to ask you questions, about what's going on. They also get a chance to tell on, on what their bosses are doing at the same time. But because you work with all of them, even those communications are personal. They're them. When they stand up, they call you by your first name because they work with you or work for you. So then you can talk to them on a whole nother level, or they can share with you certain things that you listening to them and from this particular individual, that's got an element of truth that I need to follow up on, but that's what made now managing the 12 easier, because I had came through the ranks to be able to. I would hate to be a person, looking back on that, I would hate to be a person who just wanted somebody that got pushed through and given that responsibility. Every day would have to be a nightmare. Okay, so think this way. Think this way, Laolu. Every morning you get up, and as you're putting on your clothes, you're looking at the news. And so as you're looking at the news and the weather, all of a sudden you hear about there's a snow blizzard in the Northeast around your plant, one of your plants, a snow blizzard where, trucks can't get in. So in other words, that plants can't get trucks in, can't get materials in. They're coming to a standstill. So now I have to call them and be worried about, do they have, just in case they are snowed in, do they have food? Do they have enough employees to keep the place running as they let people go home early to take care of their own homes? But you may come into another one. You may come and see something happening in, let's say, California. Okay, you got forest fires. You got you got fires close to a plant. You're going like, oh, what now? What I got to worry about? Now I got to worry about how close is the fire? What are we doing to make sure that we are protecting the assets from the fire? It could be flooding. It could be flooding in a plant. Like Houston, you get a flood here, and all of a sudden we had a plant here get flooded. And you have to figure out how to get down to Houston in a helicopter to see exactly how much damage took place on the flood. Or it could be Southern California. You're every day you're looking at the weather, and you pretty much know how your day is going to go. At least some portion of your day is going to go or it could be an explosion. You might have had a boiler explode or something like that. Then you have to go like, well, wait a minute. Okay, so now I know I'm going to get a lot of help. I know OSHA is going to be there. It's going to be everybody in there figuring out, what you did wrong, So every morning, that's what you're dealing with. Not only just what's happening with the employees themselves or the process getting product out the door. You're worrying about just making sure that assets are not being challenged.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my day.
Mm. So you serve in this role. How many years were you in the role, and how did your career sort of wind down?
Okay, so all right, so I worked up there for 11 years. 11 years of which 8 of them were in the vice president of operations, plant operations or operations, where I had the plants and corporate. All right. So then, okay, now let me just share this, some of the sacrifices. I commuted from St. Louis to Houston for 11 years. Every week or every 2 weeks, coming home. Generally it was every week, but occasionally it would be every 2 weeks. But most of the time it was every week for 11 years. Right? So think of it this way. So wherever I was in the country, if I was in St. Louis, okay, I could take Southwest. I could come on home from Southwest. But if I was in another part of the country, then I had to figure out how I was going to get from there back to Houston. Fly, catch a flight back to Houston. So I was in airports, all the time through those 11 years. I was lucky that I had a spouse that could hold down the fort for me because my family was in Houston, but my office was in St. Louis. So my wife was able to hold down the fort here in Houston and take care of all the issues that arise in Houston. Houston. Because what you'll find, and I'm sure if you talk to others that have done what I've done or achieved what I've achieved, what you'll find is you'll find out one day that you don't have a home. So you can bounce from place to place to place, and you really don't have a home. So when I finally got to Houston, I said, I don't care where I go or whatever happens from this point, I'm going to get a home, because what tends to happen, you don't establish any relationships in a place because you know that you might leave. You don't know how long you're going to be there. So, you're going to move into a Newark, you'll say, well, my neighbors and everything is, okay, I got neighbors. I might talk to them a little bit, but you're not creating any relationships because you might be gone, in 2 or 3 years or 4 years or 5. You never knew when you were going to be leaving. So, but it's at one point in my career, I said, look, I got to stop, find a home. So when I got to Houston, I said, I'm going to make Houston home. And then wherever I go from there, I'll fly to it and keep commuting. And that's what I did for 11 years. So that was like 8 years of commuting in that role, and then another 3 years because then I got promoted to. I was given the assignment of president CEO of our 5 packaging subsidiaries. So now, now this is a whole another type of thing. Where before I was always worried about reducing costs, quality of product, keeping the employees safe. Now in this other line of work that I was in, with where it's made 5 different types of products and materials involved. Now I had to make a profit. Now I was working to budget on one side of the business all my career. Now I go into another side of the business, but now I got to generate a profit. I got to make something, sell it, and generate and make money from it so that I can pay people and pay for materials and pay for the cost of goods. Pay for the cost of goods along with salaries, wages, and so forth. So now that's a whole nother mindset, which is more of the entrepreneurial approach of where, like in your case, like an entrepreneur, you're now more of an entrepreneur where you're looking for customers. You're looking for customers. You're trying to get a good contract, for what you're making, so that you contract large enough and across a number of years that you can then be able to have some confidence that you can pay people.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother approach.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Truly, truly incredible. So you have this career and it's just been wonderful. And I'm so glad that you're able to share your story. For people who, might be thinking corporate career, they're currently in corporate careers, are there any books or movies you might suggest? If there's a go-to movie or book, which one might it be?
Okay, I have this one movie that I think that sums up, especially if you're in the corporate world. Okay, sure. It's called The Company Men. Okay, if you look at that movie, that's inevitable. If you look at that movie, if you're in the corporate world and you in it any length of time, that's going to be you. All right, The Company Men.
Okay, I'll have to add that to my watch list this summer.
When I was an adjunct professor at a couple of the universities, I required viewing to basically what's inevitable.
So if you could offer advice to a 20 or 30-year-old version of yourself.
I think I got your question. If I could offer advice to a 20 or 30-year-old of me, a person like me, if you will, coming through, I would say do what's right versus what's convenient. No matter how, because convenience always going to be easy. Right's going to be tough sometimes. Do what's right versus what's convenient. You'll sleep better. You'll sleep a lot better when you do what's right versus make the decisions, even though no matter how costly they are, no matter, because right is difficult sometimes. Now, right is difficult a lot of times. I mean, especially the higher you go. Mm-hmm. The point is, but do what's right versus convenient. I would say the other thing is to recognize that every assignment is a building block of learning. Every assignment is a building block of learning that one day you may be able to leverage. That you may be able to leverage to let's say maybe to give you an opportunity, give you a chance at more opportunity. But always look at, because I know when you're young, when you're just starting out, and you've been doing it for 2 or 3 years, you get antsy. You get a little bit of, you should be looking at those first 5 years, 6 years, if you will, as that you're working on your game. That you're working on your game. It's sort of like a pro, let's say a pro basketball player, as an example. They get that way because they're working on their game all the time. They're working on their game, their shot, their footwork, They're working on ball handling skills. They're working on their game, or they're working on their stamina. They have to work on their game all the time, because in certain companies, especially performance-driven companies, you may be on the bench. You may be on the bench, but if you get called into the game, you got to be ready to play. You got to be ready to play. If you're not ready to play, guess what happens to you? It's the same as in pro sports. You go to the other end of the bench and you might not get a chance to be called on again. You get one shot. So you got to be ready to play. So if you get that assignment, you get that opportunity, work on honing your skills so that when you're called up to play, you're ready to play. That's what I would tell that. Don't look at these 5 years as, hey, I'm just wasting time. Look at it as an opportunity to build yourself. Build yourself so that you can leverage that for the next 5 years. Here's the other thing that's very important, is what I call the age and time continuum. All right. Okay. So it's kind of like it's important that you know what you want to be or what you want to do, or, as early as you can identify that, it's important. All right. You can't be 40 and thinking about what you want to be or what you want to do. You got to come to that conclusion, even if you can come to that conclusion in college. If you can come, even better if you can come in high school, because then all your effort can be about being that, accomplishing that task, that you're not wasting time doing other things that could be, if you knew what you wanted to be, working on that, so that you can hone that, improve, take the classes, do whatever it takes to be that. Okay. So, but let's say you don't. Let's say you now, in college now, you graduated. I'm just saying you really know what you want to be. What is it? If you want to be I'm using the example as a plant manager. If that's what you want to be, then you better be positioning yourself, working on your skills, working on experience, and getting the kinds of experience that would allow you to be that along the way. You want to know what it takes to be that, if that's what you, so you're not wasting your effort that's not going to get you to that objective. So think of it this way. If you want to be plant manager on this continuum, if you want to be plant manager as an example, then okay, so you're 22, 23, you're working on it. That's great. But by the time you hit 30, maybe early 30s, mid 30s, you need to have moved. Need to have made a move, somewhere, to the next position, to the next spot. Okay, so now you're 40. Then you need to be making sure, if that's your goal, then you need to be making another move, so that you're progressing in such a way that time and your age come into play, that allows you to accomplish that ultimate objective, whatever that is. I just plant manager, whatever it is, but you got to be moving and making decisions somewhere along the way. Like if it's not happening, so you can't be here and okay, so now you're way back here at the start, and now you're 40. Your chances of being that in plant manager, as an example, it's not a miracle occurs, between 40, and normally that person being that plant manager is going to be like maybe 50, late 40s. So if you're 40 or if you're 35 and you're still back here, that's not going to happen. Not unless you make some changes, to put you on the path to make that happen. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? But you got to know what you can't be trying to figure it out. Like to say, try to figure it out. No, you got to have that so that you're not wasting effort, and that you're making sure you're making progress to accomplish that ultimate objective. because no one's going to give you, no one's going to tell you, oh, I think you could be. Nah, no one's going to tell you that I think you could be plant manager. No, it doesn't happen. That most people don't even make it to that point, no matter what their degree is or whatever. Here's another thing too. Okay, so when you make those moves, let's make sure that whatever you're getting paid, you make sure you do a complete analysis of what you're getting paid, your whole package. Okay, so make sure you understand what you're making, like wage or salary, what the benefit piece is and what that costs, what vacation, what everything, healthcare, everything what that costs, so that the bottom line is you say, hey, I might be making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, but all in with all these benefits, I might be making $95,000, as an example. So when you make that next move, if you make another move, especially if you're leaving that particular organization, you better make sure that because they're going to offer you what you said, that you're making here. You better make sure before you make that jump that you're making that 95, and with another percent or so with another maybe 5 or 10% more on top of that. Or why make the move? Or unless there's more opportunity or something, but it all still gets down to money. So that's another piece of advice that I would give that 20 or 30 year, especially when they get antsy, when they get, they get like, I'm just my life, they think that life is not going their way or in their job or whatever. Then make sure you do that financial analysis on what you're being total package of what you're being paid, and then start making your move. As an example, what I would tell my 20 or 30-year-old self, I would just say, learn. Don't get frustrated. Learn.
Another thing,
if you, like, as an example, okay, wait a minute, Laolu, if you say you want to be plant manager, and I can keep using that as an example. Okay, but if you know that all plant managers have an MBA or some advanced degree, then what does that tell you? If that's what you want to be, then you better be working on that advanced degree.
Yeah.
Or else it is not going to happen for you. As an example.
Another thing that you've often mentioned to me, in addition to financial security, is health. So why do you place such emphasis on that?
On
health, personal health, yes.
Personal health?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because like the saying goes, real wealth is health. It's how you take care of yourself. So as you're coming through, make sure you should always think of it like, here's my other, along with health, here's some advice I got for that 20 or 30-year-old. When you start that job, start thinking about how you want to live when you're done, and plan for when you're done. So in other words, don't be trying to plan for when you're done at 40 or at 50. Don't plan. That's too late. You got to almost, as soon as you start that job, you need to start it in such a way, be it 401k or, getting health care, taking care of yourself. You need to start thinking, because what you want to do is make sure that when it's over, that you can live comfortably when it's over. Yeah. But you can't do it at 50. That's what's happening in the country right now. There's a lot of people that may be unemployed, but they're 50-something years old, and now, they're not, let's say, having set themselves up for life after.
Sure.
So go ahead.
Talking about life after, I know that family legacy is a big thing for you. and protecting that legacy for the long haul is something that I'm personally aware that you value very strongly. And then protecting sort of and building and protecting generational wealth. I've had the KM experience. So why don't you share a bit with us about what's on the horizon and your thoughts around leaving a legacy, family, and when it's all said and done?
Like, I think that's something that as African Americans or people of color, that's something that maybe it's because I know it's because sometimes we didn't have maybe enough disposable income or enough income to be thinking about generational wealth. But I'm just saying, if you're on that path, it's about what you can leave to make it a little easier for, let's say, you don't want to make it where they're lazy or something, but you want to give it something where they've got something to start from. So my goal now in retirement, now that I'm really retired now, it's about maintaining or building generational wealth, so that at one day I could be a legacy where I can hand that down to my children, and then hopefully their children, and basically to build from there. It's like right now I can go back to family wise. I've been really working on this since I've had time, to go back and find out just as far back I can go with my family. And I can go back to like 1862, right in that area, 1862. But so part of my role is the patriarch of the family, is to make sure they understand where that family came from, who they are, and where it all started, that we have documentation for, because things get sketchy around 1862, 1865. Things get a little sketchy. Okay.
Certainly.
Become non-existent, But I try to, share with them. I want to make sure I leave that as part of the legacy, as to that they then can share, but along with that quote, part of the generational wealth thing. So knowledge about family, knowledge about also putting them in such a way that they then have a chance to then build from there, to then allow their children to excel. I have three adult kids, children or whatever. I can call them, they're adults now, but so, but one of the things I want to always make sure that I was there to say, hey, you have to go to school. There's no option. You're going to college, and then from there, you're going to keep advancing and keep moving forward. And so as a result, now they can then take that same and then pass that on to their kids. But I am a big proponent of generational wealth, of passing on generational wealth.
Yeah. This has been wonderful. You've talked and emphasized the importance of discipline, finding and working for principled organizations, particularly if you can find a space where things are objective rather than subjective. You talked about starting early, the 50-40-10 rule. Just so many important nuggets have been shared today. My guest today has been Michael S. Harden. My name is Laolu Davies-Yemitan, and you've been listening to My Brother Podcast.